You're too old to matter anymore, Grandma. Just sign the papers and stop making this difficult. I stood there in my own living room, those words cutting deeper than any blade could. But what I discovered next, and the decision I made because of it, would change everything forever. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment what country you're watching from so I can see how far my truth has traveled. This is a story about family, betrayal, and the moment I finally decided to stand up for myself. My name is Eleanor Whitfield, and I'm 70 years old. Some people hear that number and immediately picture a frail old woman shuffling around with a walker, confused about technology, waiting for the end. Those people would be dead wrong. I wake up at 6 every morning and do yoga. I volunteer at the Maplewood Community Library 3 days a week. I have a book club that meets every Thursday evening. I garden, I cook elaborate meals just for the joy of it, and I video chat with friends across the country. My mind is sharp, my body is strong for my age, and I have no intention of slowing down anytime soon. I live in Cedarbrook, a small town in Northern California with tree-lined streets and that perfect small-town charm where neighbors actually know each other's names. My home is a 3-bedroom craftsman-style house on Willow Lane that my late husband, Robert, and I bought 42 years ago. We raised our son here, celebrated anniversaries here, and planned to grow old together here. Robert passed away 6 years ago from a sudden heart attack. One moment he was laughing at something on television, the next he was gone. The grief nearly destroyed me. For months, I wandered through our house like a ghost, unable to comprehend how someone so vital could simply cease to exist. But I survived. I rebuilt my life piece by piece. I honored Robert's memory by living fully, by not letting his death be the end of my story too. He would have wanted that. Robert had been a careful man, a planner. He worked for 35 years as an engineer for Morrison Tech Industries, and he saved diligently. Between his life insurance policy, his pension, our retirement accounts, and the house that had appreciated significantly over the decades, he left me comfortable. Not wealthy by California standards, but secure. The house alone was now worth about $480,000 thanks to the Bay Area's influence spreading north. I had enough to live on, to enjoy small luxuries, to help my family when they needed it. And I had been generous. Perhaps too generous, I would later realize. David Whitfield is my only child, and for most of his life, he was everything a mother could hope for. Kind, responsible, hardworking. He graduated from UC Berkeley with a degree in business administration and built a successful career in corporate sales. He married his college sweetheart, Melissa, and together they gave me the greatest gift of my life, my grandson, Ethan. David and Melissa's marriage seemed solid for 23 years. They lived in San Jose, about 90 miles south of Cedarbrook, in a nice suburban home with a pool and a 2-car garage. David climbed the corporate ladder steadily, and Melissa worked as a pediatric nurse. They were, by all appearances, living the American dream. Then Melissa got sick. Ovarian cancer. Stage 3 by the time they caught it. She fought for 2 brutal years, enduring surgeries, chemotherapy, radiation. I drove down to San Jose every week to help, to cook meals, to sit with her when David had to work, to hold her hand during the worst moments. Ethan was 20 years old when his mother died, a junior at San Francisco State University. The loss devastated him. He'd always been close to Melissa, they had that special mother-son bond that's rare and beautiful. Watching him grieve broke my heart almost as much as losing Melissa herself. David seemed to collapse inward after her death. He threw himself into work, rarely talked about his feelings, and started drinking more than he should. I worried about him constantly, called him every day, visited as often as he'd allow. I helped financially too. Melissa's medical bills had been astronomical, even with insurance. I gave David $35,000 from my savings to help clear the debt. I didn't ask for it back. He was my son, and he was suffering. That's what family does. For 3 years after Melissa's death, David lived in a fog. Then, 18 months ago, everything changed. He met Vanessa. David called me one Sunday evening, his voice lighter than I'd heard it in years. "Mom, I met someone. Her name is Vanessa. I think you're going to really like her." My heart swelled with hope. My son deserved happiness again. Melissa would have wanted him to move forward, to find companionship. I was genuinely excited to meet this woman who had brought life back into David's voice. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Tell me about her." "She's incredible, Mom. Smart, ambitious, beautiful. She works in commercial real estate investment. We met at a business conference in Sacramento, and we just clicked. She's different from anyone I've ever known." Different. That word would prove more accurate than David intended. 2 weeks later, David brought Vanessa to Cedarbrook for Sunday dinner. I spent the entire morning preparing. I made pot roast with all the fixings, homemade rolls, and Robert's favorite apple pie. I wanted Vanessa to feel welcomed, to see that David came from a loving, warm family. They arrived at 3 in the afternoon. Through my front window, I watched them get out of David's car. Vanessa emerged first, and my initial impression was striking. She was beautiful in that polished, almost intimidating way. Tall and slender, probably in her early 40s, with honey blonde hair styled in perfect waves that fell just past her shoulders. She wore white designer jeans, a silk blouse, and shoes with heels so high and thin I couldn't imagine walking in them. Everything about her screamed expensive. I opened the door with my warmest smile. "David." "Vanessa. Come in, come in." David hugged me tight, and for a moment, I felt the sun I knew returning. But when I moved to embrace Vanessa, she extended her hand instead, keeping me at a distance. "Mrs. Whitfield," she said, her handshake brief and businesslike. "David has told me so much about you. What a quaint little home you have here." Quaint. The word landed wrong, carrying a subtle dismissiveness that made my smile falter. "Thank you. Robert and I put a lot of love into this place. Please, come in. Dinner's almost ready." As Vanessa walked through my home, I noticed her eyes scanning everything with an appraising quality. Not the interested appreciation of someone seeing their boyfriend's childhood home, but the calculating assessment of someone evaluating property. At dinner, I tried to engage her in conversation, to learn about her, to find common ground. "David mentioned you're in real estate investment. That must be fascinating work." Vanessa dabbed her mouth with her napkin before answering. "It's lucrative if you know what you're doing. I specialize in identifying undervalued properties and flipping them for maximum profit. You'd be amazed how many people sit on valuable assets without realizing their potential." She looked around my dining room as she said this, her gaze lingering on the original built-in china cabinet and the craftsman woodwork. "Properties like this one, for instance," she continued. "Original 1920s craftsman, good bones, excellent lot size. In the right market, properly staged and renovated, this could easily sell for $550,000, maybe more." I felt a chill run down my spine. "I'm not planning to sell. This is my home." Vanessa's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Of course not. I'm just saying, from an investment perspective, you're sitting on significant equity. At your age, it's something to think about." At your age. She'd known me for less than an hour and was already making assumptions about what I should do based on my age. David jumped in, clearly uncomfortable. "Mom's house is beautiful just as it is. This is where I grew up. So many memories here." But Vanessa wasn't finished. Throughout the meal, she made comment after comment that felt increasingly intrusive. "Have you thought about downsizing? These big houses can be such a burden for seniors. Does David have power of attorney yet? It's so important to get those legal matters settled before there's an emergency. I hope you have a solid estate plan. The taxes can be brutal if things aren't structured properly." Each question felt like a probe, testing my defenses, gathering information. David seemed oblivious, or perhaps he'd grown so accustomed to her directness that he no longer noticed how inappropriate it was. When they finally left that evening, I stood in my doorway waving goodbye, a knot of unease in my stomach. Something about Vanessa felt wrong. Predatory. Like she'd been taking inventory of my life, calculating its value. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was just protective of David and naturally suspicious of anyone new in his life. I wanted to like her. I wanted David to be happy. But my instincts were screaming at me to be careful. Over the next few months, David and Vanessa's relationship moved quickly. Within 6 months, she'd moved into his house in San Jose. David seemed happier than he'd been since Melissa died, and I tried to focus on that positive change. But then Vanessa started cultivating a relationship with Ethan, and that's when I really started to worry. Ethan had graduated from San Francisco State and was working at a tech startup in the city, living in a small apartment he could barely afford. At 24, he was still finding his way in the world, still processing his mother's death, still figuring out who he was as an adult. Vanessa took an immediate interest in him. She invited him to dinners at the house. She gave him advice about his career. She introduced him to people in her professional network. On the surface, it looked like she was being a supportive stepmother figure. But I noticed something else. She was shaping him, molding his perspectives, particularly about money and success. Ethan started using phrases that didn't sound like him. You have to think strategically about assets. Emotional attachment to property is financially irrational. Family legacy is about wealth transfer, not sentiment. These were Vanessa's words coming out of my grandson's mouth. When Ethan visited me for lunch one Saturday, about 8 months after Vanessa entered our lives, I finally heard it directly. We were sitting on my back porch, drinking lemonade and enjoying the spring weather. I'd been telling him about the community garden project at the library when he interrupted. Grandma, I've been talking to Vanessa about your situation. My situation? I set down my glass. What situation? Your house, your finances, your future planning. She says you're not being strategic about your assets. You're sitting on almost $500,000 in home equity, and you're doing nothing with it. Ethan, I'm living in it. That's not nothing. He leaned forward with the earnest intensity of someone who believes they're delivering important wisdom. But you could be leveraging that equity. You could sell this place, move into a smaller condo or a senior community, and invest the difference. You could be building wealth instead of just maintaining it. I don't want to build wealth, sweetheart. I have enough for my needs. I want to live in my home. Frustration flashed across his face. That's exactly what Vanessa said you'd say. You're thinking emotionally instead of rationally. Grandma, at your age, you need to think about the future. What happens when you can't maintain this place anymore? What happens if you need medical care? Ethan, I'm 70, not 90. I'm perfectly capable of. That's not the point. The point is proper planning. Vanessa says that people your age often make poor financial decisions because they're stuck in old ways of thinking. She says you could set Dad and me up much better if you were smarter about asset management. I stared at my grandson, barely recognizing him. This young man who used to help me plant tomatoes and spend hours reading on my porch swing was now looking at me like I was a financial problem to be solved. Vanessa says a lot, doesn't she? I asked quietly. He missed my tone entirely. She's really smart about this stuff, Grandma. She's helped Dad get his finances organized. She could help you too. That conversation haunted me for days. Vanessa wasn't just manipulating David, she was recruiting Ethan as an ally, filling his head with ideas about my home as an asset to be exploited rather than a place filled with love and memories. I started to distance myself from the family visits. When David called to invite me to Sunday dinners, I made excuses. I couldn't sit at a table with Vanessa, feeling her eyes assessing everything I owned, hearing her subtle suggestions about what I should do with my life. David noticed. Mom, you never come down anymore. Vanessa thinks you don't like her. It's not that, I lied. I'm just busy with the library and my book club. But David wasn't fooled. The visits became less frequent from both sides. We talked on the phone, but there was a new distance between us, a careful avoidance of certain topics. The closeness we'd shared was eroding, and I didn't know how to stop it without creating a confrontation I wasn't ready for. 3 weeks ago, on a Sunday afternoon, everything came to a head. David called on Thursday. "Mom, we need to have a family meeting. It's important. Can we come up this Sunday?" "A family meeting? About what?" "Just some financial planning stuff we need to discuss. It'll be me, Vanessa, and Ethan. Sunday at 2? Something in his tone made my stomach clench. "David, what's this really about?" "We'll talk about it Sunday, Mom. Just please be available. This is important." I spent the days leading up to Sunday filled with dread. I knew, somehow, that whatever was coming wasn't good. But I couldn't refuse to see my own son and grandson. Sunday morning, I cleaned the house and baked a lemon pound cake, David's childhood favorite. Despite my anxiety, they were still my family. I still loved them. They arrived precisely at 2. David drove his Tesla, and all 3 of them emerged dressed in what I can only describe as business casual. This wasn't a family visit. This was, as David had called it, a meeting. Vanessa carried a black leather portfolio that looked expensive and official. She wore a gray pantsuit and heels, her hair pulled back in a sleek bun. She looked like she was heading into a boardroom, not her boyfriend's mother's home. Ethan wore slacks and a button-down shirt, looking uncomfortable and avoiding eye contact with me. David had the tense expression of someone about to do something difficult. "Come in," I said, my voice sounding smaller than I intended. We settled in the living room. I sat in Robert's old chair, my chair now, while the 3 of them arranged themselves on the couch like a unified front. Vanessa placed her portfolio on the coffee table with deliberate precision. "Eleanor," Vanessa began, and I hated that she used my first name without ever asking permission, "we appreciate you making time for this discussion." "Family doesn't need to make appointments," I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. She smiled that tight, professional smile I'd come to recognize. "Of course. But this is a significant conversation, and we wanted to ensure we had your full attention." She opened the portfolio and spread several documents across my coffee table. I recognized legal forms, financial statements, and what looked like property appraisals. "David and Ethan have asked me to help with some family financial planning," Vanessa continued. "As you know, I have extensive experience in real estate and investment strategy. We've been reviewing the family's overall financial position, and we've identified some concerns and opportunities." "Opportunities?" My mouth felt dry. "Your house, Eleanor. You're sitting on approximately $480,000 in equity based on recent comparables in Cedarbrook. That's a substantial asset that's currently not working for you or your family. I live here. It's working as my home." Vanessa's expression remained patient, like she was explaining something simple to a child. "I understand the emotional attachment. But from a practical standpoint, you're elderly, living alone in a 3-bedroom house that requires maintenance and upkeep. The property taxes alone are over $6,000 annually. The utility costs, repairs, insurance, it's a significant drain on your fixed income. I manage my expenses just fine. For now," she said, and those 2 words carried weight. "But Eleanor, you're 70 years old. What happens in 5 years? 10 years? What happens when you can't manage the stairs anymore? What happens if you need medical care or assisted living? This house would have to be sold anyway, likely under distress circumstances that wouldn't maximize its value." David finally spoke. "Mom, we're just trying to think ahead. To protect you and make sure everyone's taken care of." "Protect me from what?" Vanessa slid a document toward me. "We've had an attorney draft a property transfer agreement. The house would be transferred into a family trust with David as the primary trustee and beneficiary. You would retain a life estate, meaning you could continue living here for as long as you're able. But the property itself would be protected from estate taxes, potential nursing home claims, and other financial liabilities." I stared at the document, my hands beginning to shake. "You want me to sign my house over to David?" To a trust that benefits the whole family, Vanessa corrected smoothly. This is a common estate planning strategy. It protects the asset while ensuring you can still live here. And frankly, Eleanor, the house will go to David eventually anyway. This just makes it official and provides significant tax advantages. Tax advantages for whom? For everyone. For you, for David, for Ethan. This is about smart planning. I looked at my son, searching his face for the boy I'd raised, the man who had cried on my shoulder when his wife died. David, do you really want this? He couldn't hold my gaze. Mom, it makes sense. Vanessa's explained it all to me. The tax implications alone. I don't care about tax implications. My voice rose despite myself. This is my home. Mine and Robert's. This is where I raised you, where every wall holds a memory. You want me to just sign it away? You'd still live here, David insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. Until when? Until you decide I can't? Until Vanessa decides the house would be worth more if it were sold and renovated? Vanessa's expression hardened slightly. Eleanor, you're being emotional instead of practical. This resistance is exactly why we need to have this conversation now, while you're still competent to make decisions. The implication hung in the air like poison. While I was still competent. That's when Ethan spoke up, and his words shattered whatever remained of my heart. Grandma, why are you making this so complicated? His voice carried frustration and impatience. You're too old to matter anymore in terms of building wealth or making financial decisions. Vanessa knows what she's doing. You need to trust that we're trying to help you. Just sign the papers and stop making this difficult. The room fell silent. Too old to matter. My grandson, the baby I'd held in the hospital, the toddler whose scraped knees I'd kissed, the teenager I'd helped with college applications, the young man I'd supported through his mother's death, had just told me I was too old to matter. I looked at the three of them sitting on my couch, united in their mission to take my home. David looked ashamed but not ashamed enough to speak up. Vanessa looked triumphant behind her professional mask. Ethan looked annoyed that I was wasting their time. Something inside me broke. Or perhaps something inside me finally snapped into clarity. Get out, I said quietly. Mom, David started. Get out of my house. Now. Vanessa began gathering her papers with exaggerated patience. Eleanor, you're having an emotional reaction. Perhaps we should table this discussion and try again when you've had time to think rationally. I am thinking rationally. I stood up, my whole body trembling. You come into my home, treat me like I'm senile, try to manipulate me into signing over my property, and you have the audacity to tell me I'm being emotional? We're trying to help you, Ethan said, his tone suggesting I was being unreasonable. Help me? You just told me I'm too old to matter. You're not trying to help me, you're trying to help yourselves to my home. David stood, finally showing some emotion. Mom, that's not fair. We love you. We're thinking about your future. No, David. You're thinking about your inheritance. There's a difference. Vanessa stood as well, smoothing her suit jacket. I warned David this would be difficult. The elderly often have trouble accepting that they need help managing their affairs. It's a common psychological reaction. Her condescension was the final straw. I walked to my front door and opened it wide. Leave. Now. And take your papers and your manipulation and your greed with you. Ethan shook his head as he walked past me. This is exactly what Vanessa said would happen. You're too stubborn and too set in your ways to see that we're trying to help. Fine. Stay in your house alone. See how that works out for you when you're sick and alone and have nobody. The cruelty in his words took my breath away. This wasn't my grandson. This was someone Vanessa had molded into a weapon. David paused at the door, looking back at me with something like regret. Mom, I'm sorry this went badly. But we're going to have this conversation eventually. Please think about what we said. I have thought about it. And the answer is no. This is my home, and it will remain my home until I decide otherwise. Vanessa was the last to leave. She paused in the doorway, her expression calculating. Eleanor, I hope you'll reconsider. David deserves to have his inheritance secured. He's been through so much. Don't let stubbornness ruin your relationship with your family. Then they were gone. I closed the door and stood in my entryway, my legs suddenly weak. I made it to the couch before collapsing, and then the tears came. I cried for the family I thought I had. I cried for my son who had become a stranger. I cried for my grandson who thought I was too old to matter. I cried for the loneliness of realizing that the people I loved most in the world saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to their financial goals. But as the tears dried and evening shadows stretched across my living room, something else began to grow inside me. Anger. Cold, clear, righteous anger. They thought I was too old to matter. They thought I was too weak or too confused to stand up for myself. They thought they could manipulate me, pressure me, shame me into giving up everything Robert and I had built. They were wrong. I might be 70 years old, but I wasn't helpless. I wasn't senile. And I certainly wasn't going to let Vanessa Sterling steal my home or turn my family against me without a fight. Over the next few days, as I processed what had happened, I started paying closer attention. I started asking questions. I started investigating. And what I discovered would change everything. I didn't sleep that Sunday night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Ethan's voice, "You're too old to matter anymore." I lay in the darkness of my bedroom, the same room Robert and I had shared for over 4 decades, and felt the weight of betrayal crushing my chest. The ceiling fan turned lazy circles above me, its gentle hum the only sound in a house that suddenly felt too big, too empty, too vulnerable. Around 3 in the morning, I gave up on sleep entirely. I made chamomile tea and sat at my kitchen table, staring at the lemon pound cake I'd baked for them. It sat untouched on the counter, a sad monument to my naive hope that this had been a normal family visit. The property transfer documents they'd left behind were still scattered on my coffee table. I'd been too upset to even look at them after they left, but now, in the pre-dawn quiet, I forced myself to examine them. The legal language was dense and confusing, filled with terms like irrevocable trust, life estate, and remainder interest. But certain phrases jumped out at me with crystal clarity. Eleanor Whitfield hereby transfers all rights, title, and interest in the property located at 847 Willow Lane, Cedarbrook, California. David Whitfield shall serve as sole trustee with full authority to manage, lease, sell, or otherwise dispose of the property. Upon the death or incapacity of Eleanor Whitfield, or upon her voluntary vacation of the premises. Incapacity. Voluntary vacation. The phrases were cold, clinical, designed to sound reasonable while giving David, and by extension, Vanessa, complete control over my home and my life. I noticed something else too. The document had been prepared by Berkshire and Associates, a law firm in San Francisco. Someone had paid legal fees to draw up these papers before even asking me if I was interested. They'd been so confident I would sign, or so determined to pressure me into signing, that they'd spent money on attorneys. How long had they been planning this? As dawn broke over Cedarbrook, painting my kitchen in soft gold light, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be a victim. I wasn't going to sit in my house waiting for the next manipulation, the next pressure campaign, the next attempt to take what was mine. I was going to find out exactly who Vanessa Sterling was and what she was really after. Starting the investigation. Monday morning, I was at the Maplewood Community Library when it opened at 9. As a volunteer, I had my own key, but today I wasn't there to shelve books or help patrons. I was there to use the computers and the research databases that most people didn't even know the library subscribed to. My friend Patricia Chin worked as the head librarian. She'd been my closest friend since we'd both moved to Cedarbrook in the early 1980s. Patricia was 72, sharp as a tack, and had the research skills of a professional investigator thanks to her decades helping students and patrons track down obscure information. "Eleanor," she said, looking up from her desk with immediate concern when she saw my face. "What's wrong?" You look like you haven't slept. I glanced around the empty library. It was early, and we had the place to ourselves. Patricia, I need your help with something. And I need you to keep it confidential. Her expression grew serious. Of course. Come to my office. In the privacy of her small office at the back of the library, I told her everything. The Sunday meeting, the property transfer documents, Ethan's cruel words, my growing suspicions about Vanessa. Patricia listened without interrupting, her face growing more troubled with each detail. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Eleanor, this is elder financial abuse. You know that, right? What they tried to do, pressuring you to sign over your property, using family relationships as leverage, that's textbook exploitation. Hearing it named so clearly made something inside me solidify. I know. But I need to understand who I'm dealing with. I need to know who Vanessa Sterling really is. Patricia nodded slowly. Then let's find out. We spent the next 3 hours at her computer, digging into Vanessa's background. Patricia showed me how to use advanced search techniques, public records databases, social media archives, and professional networking sites. What we found was disturbing. Vanessa Sterling's LinkedIn profile presented her as a successful commercial real estate investor with 15 years of experience. Her profile photo was professionally taken, showing her in a power suit with that same calculating smile I'd come to recognize. Her experience section listed impressive-sounding positions at various real estate investment firms. But when Patricia started cross-referencing the companies Vanessa claimed to have worked for, things got murky. This firm, Pinnacle Property Investments, where she says she was a senior acquisitions manager from 2015 to 2019, Patricia said, clicking through search results. I can't find any record of it existing. No business license in California, no corporate filings, nothing. Maybe it was a small company? Small companies still have to register with the state. And look at this, Westshore Capital Group, where she claims she worked before that. It did exist, but it went bankrupt in 2014 amid allegations of investor fraud. My stomach tightened. Fraud? Patricia pulled up a news article from the San Francisco Chronicle dated March 2014. Westshore Capital principals face fraud charges after $3 million investment scheme collapses. I leaned closer to read. The article detailed how Westshore Capital had solicited investments for commercial real estate projects that either didn't exist or were grossly misrepresented. Investors lost millions. Several principals were charged with securities fraud. Vanessa Sterling wasn't named in the article, but the timeline aligned perfectly with when she claimed to have worked there. She was either involved in the fraud or she left before it all fell apart, Patricia said. Either way, it's suspicious that she doesn't mention the company's bankruptcy on her LinkedIn. We kept digging. Patricia found Vanessa's Facebook profile, which was set to private, but her Instagram was public. It was a carefully curated collection of luxury lifestyle photos, expensive restaurants, designer clothes, exotic vacation destinations, high-end cars. Look at the dates on these posts, Patricia said, scrolling through the feed. 6 months ago, she's posting from what looks like a budget hotel in Reno. Then suddenly, right around the time you said she met David, the posts change. Designer handbags, luxury spa days, expensive dinners in San Francisco. David's been paying for all of this, I said quietly. He told me things were tight financially after Melissa's medical bills, but Vanessa's living like money is no object. Because it's not her money, Patricia said grimly. We found more troubling information. Patricia accessed county court records and discovered that Vanessa had been sued twice in the past 7 years, once by a former business partner claiming she'd embezzled funds from a joint venture, and once by a landlord for unpaid rent and property damage. Both cases had been settled out of court, which meant the details weren't public, but the very existence of the lawsuits painted a picture of someone with a history of financial disputes and questionable business practices. Eleanor, look at this, Patricia said, pulling up a different search result. There's a Vanessa Sterling who was arrested in Nevada in 2016 for identity theft and credit card fraud. The charges were dropped due to insufficient evidence, but... She pulled up the booking photo. It was grainy and several years old, but it was definitely Vanessa. Younger, with different hair, but unmistakably her. I felt cold. She's a criminal. She was arrested. The charges were dropped. But combined with everything else. Patricia sat back in her chair. Eleanor, this woman is dangerous. She's not just a gold digger looking for a wealthy man to support her. She's got a pattern of financial manipulation and possibly fraud. And now she's got access to your son and is trying to get access to your assets. What should I do? Patricia thought for a moment. First, you need to protect yourself legally. You need to make sure your will is up to date and that you have all your legal documents in order, power of attorney, healthcare directives, all of it. Make sure David doesn't have access to anything financial. My heart sank. He's the executor of my estate. Robert and I set that up years ago. Then you need to change it. Immediately. Eleanor, I know this is hard, but right now your son is under this woman's influence. You can't trust that he'll act in your best interests. The thought of removing David as my executor felt like admitting defeat, like acknowledging that my relationship with my son was truly broken. But I knew Patricia was right. Second, she continued, you need to warn David about who he's really involved with. Show him this evidence. Maybe if he sees proof of her history, he'll wake up. And if he doesn't believe me? If he thinks I'm just trying to sabotage his relationship? Patricia's expression was sad but firm. Then at least you tried. But Eleanor, you need to prepare for the possibility that David is too far gone. That Vanessa's manipulation is too strong. You might have to protect yourself even if it means going against your son. The uncomfortable conversation. That afternoon, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called Gregory Thornton, my attorney. Gregory had handled Robert's estate when he died, and he'd helped me with various legal matters over the years. He was in his 60s, thorough, and refreshingly direct. I trusted him. Eleanor, he said warmly when his secretary put me through. It's good to hear from you. What can I do for you today? Gregory, I need to update my estate documents. All of them. And I need to do it quickly. There must have been something in my voice that alarmed him, because his tone shifted immediately. Is everything all right? Has something happened? I told him an abbreviated version of Sunday's events. When I finished, there was a long pause. Eleanor, I need to ask you some direct questions, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Of course. Have you signed anything? Any documents transferring property, giving anyone power of attorney, anything at all? No. Nothing. Good. That's very good. Has anyone forged your signature on any documents that you're aware of? The question sent a chill through me. I don't think so. How would I know? We'll check. I'm going to request copies of any recorded documents affecting your property from the county recorder's office. If someone filed a fraudulent transfer, we need to know immediately. Gregory, would they really do that? His sigh was heavy. Eleanor, I've been practicing law for 35 years. I've seen family members do terrible things to each other over money and property. I'm not saying your son would forge documents, but this woman he's involved with, from what you're telling me, she's dangerous. We made an appointment for the next morning. Gregory said he'd prepare new estate documents removing David as executor and making other protective changes. Who do you want as your new executor? He asked. I thought about it. Patricia Chen. She's my best friend, and I trust her completely. Good choice. Eleanor, there's something else we need to discuss. Your will, when was the last time you updated it? Not since before Robert died. It leaves everything to David, and through him to Ethan. We need to reconsider that. Not necessarily cut them out entirely, but we need to add protections. Trusts with conditions, perhaps, to ensure the assets are actually used for their benefit and not diverted by outside parties. You mean Vanessa? Yes. If David inherits your estate while he's still involved with this woman, there's a significant risk that your assets will end up in her control. We can structure things to prevent that. After hanging up with Gregory, I sat in my kitchen feeling overwhelmed. In less than 24 hours, I'd gone from a woman who trusted her family to someone who needed legal protection from them. But there was one more thing I needed to do, as much as I dreaded it. I needed to try to reach David. To warn him. To show him what I'd learned about Vanessa. I picked up my phone and dialed his number, my heart pounding. He answered on the third ring. Mom. His voice was cautious, guarded. David, I need to talk to you. It's important. If this is about yesterday, I don't want to argue. It's about Vanessa. David, please, just listen to me. I've been looking into her background, and I found some very troubling things. The silence on the other end was cold. You've been investigating Vanessa? I had to. After what happened yesterday, I needed to know who I was dealing with. David, she was involved with a company that collapsed amid fraud allegations. She's been sued multiple times for financial disputes. She was arrested in Nevada for identity theft. Stop. His voice was hard. Just stop, Mom. David, please. I can't believe you. You're so desperate to drive Vanessa away that you're making up lies about her? I'm not making anything up. I have documentation, court records, news articles. Of course you do. You probably spent all day on the internet finding whatever garbage you could dig up to make her look bad. This is exactly what Vanessa said you'd do. That stopped me cold. What do you mean, what Vanessa said I'd do? She warned me. After we left yesterday, she said you'd probably start trying to sabotage our relationship. She said you'd make up stories, try to turn me against her, do whatever it took to maintain control over my life. Control? David, I'm trying to protect you. No, Mom. You're trying to control me. You've been doing it my whole life. You couldn't stand it when I married Melissa because it meant I didn't need you anymore. And now you can't stand that I've found happiness with Vanessa because it means you're not the most important woman in my life. The accusation was so unfair, so completely wrong, that I couldn't even formulate a response. I loved Melissa, I finally managed. I supported your marriage. I helped you through her illness and death. How can you say? Because it's true. And the worst part is, you don't even see it. You think you're being helpful, but you're actually suffocating. Vanessa's helped me see that. Vanessa is manipulating you. She's isolating you from people who actually care about you so she can control you and your money. My money? Is that what this is really about? You're upset because I'm not going to keep giving you money anymore? What? David, I never asked you for money. I gave you money when Melissa was sick. And you've never let me forget it, have you? Every time we talk, it's there in the background. I helped you when you needed it. Well, guess what, Mom? Vanessa says that's financial manipulation. You give money with strings attached, and then you hold it over people's heads. I felt like I'd been slapped. That's not. I never. I need to go. Vanessa and I have plans tonight. David, please. Just look at the information I found. Just consider the possibility that she's not who she says she is. Goodbye, Mom. And do me a favor, stop investigating my girlfriend. It's creepy and inappropriate. If you keep this up, I'm going to have to seriously limit contact with you. He hung up. I sat there holding my phone, feeling like the ground had disappeared beneath me. Every word David had said felt like it had come from Vanessa's mouth. She'd gotten so deep into his head that he couldn't even hear me anymore. She'd turned my son against me completely. The ally I didn't expect. Tuesday morning, I met with Gregory Thornton at his office in downtown Cedarbrook. His office was in one of the old Victorian buildings that had been converted to professional spaces, and normally I found it charming. Today, it just felt heavy with the weight of what I was about to do. Gregory had prepared a comprehensive package of documents. New will. New trust documents. New power of attorney for healthcare and finances. New executor designation. All of it designed to protect me and my assets from the situation with David and Vanessa. I've structured it so that David and Ethan are still beneficiaries, Gregory explained, spreading the documents across his conference table. But the inheritance goes into a protected trust. If David is still involved with Vanessa at the time of your death, the trust provisions prevent her from accessing the funds. The money would be held by an independent trustee. I recommend we use a professional trust company, and distribute it according to specific guidelines. What kind of guidelines? Education expenses, medical needs, housing, legitimate uses that benefit David and Ethan directly. But no lump sum distributions that could be diverted. And if there's evidence of financial exploitation or manipulation, the trustee has discretion to withhold distributions entirely. It felt harsh, putting my son's inheritance in a cage. But I knew it was necessary. What about the house? I asked. The house goes into a separate trust effective immediately. You're the trustee during your lifetime, with Patricia Chen as successor. Upon your death, the house either goes to David through the protected trust, or, if you choose, you can direct that it be sold with proceeds going to charity or other beneficiaries. Can I change my mind later? If things change with him and Vanessa? Absolutely. These documents are revocable. You can modify them at any time as long as you're mentally competent. But Eleanor, the key is getting them in place now, while you're clearly of sound mind, before anyone can challenge your capacity or exert undue influence. We spent 2 hours reviewing every document, making sure I understood each provision. Gregory had his secretary witness my signatures and notarize everything. When we finished, I had a complete set of documents that protected me legally. But I didn't feel protected. I felt sad and defeated. As I was leaving Gregory's office, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Mrs. Whitfield? A woman's voice, young, nervous. This is Cassidy Reynolds. I'm sorry to bother you, but I really need to talk to you about Vanessa Sterling. I stopped walking. Who are you? I'm David's assistant. At his company. I've worked for him for 3 years, and I've been watching what's happening with Vanessa, and I think you need to know some things. My heart started racing. Can you meet me somewhere? Yes. But not anywhere public. Vanessa has friends all over the city, and if she finds out I talked to you. We arranged to meet at a small park on the edge of town in an hour. I called Patricia and asked her to come with me. I didn't know who Cassidy Reynolds was or what she wanted, but I wasn't going to meet a stranger alone. Riverside Park was nearly empty on a Tuesday afternoon. Patricia and I sat on a bench near the playground, watching a young mother push her toddler on the swings while we waited. Cassidy Reynolds arrived exactly on time. She was in her late 20s, dressed in professional attire, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked nervous, constantly glancing around like she expected someone to jump out of the bushes. Mrs. Whitfield, she said as she approached. Please, call me Eleanor. This is my friend Patricia. Cassidy sat down next to us, gripping her purse like a lifeline. Thank you for meeting me. I wasn't sure if you would. You said you needed to tell me something about Vanessa. She nodded, taking a deep breath. I've been David's executive assistant for 3 years. I was there through everything with Melissa's illness. David was a good boss. Kind, fair, considerate. After Melissa died, he was obviously struggling, but he was still himself, you know? I know, I said softly. Then Vanessa came into the picture about 18 months ago. At first, everyone was happy for David. He seemed lighter, more hopeful. But then things started changing. What kind of things? Cassidy glanced around again before continuing. Vanessa started showing up at the office. A lot. She'd come by for lunch, but then she'd stay for hours, sitting in David's office. She started involving herself in business decisions. David would take her advice over his senior staff's recommendations. That doesn't sound like David, Patricia said. It wasn't like him at all. But it got worse. About 6 months ago, David restructured his business accounts. He moved a lot of his personal money into joint accounts with Vanessa. His financial advisor, who'd been working with him for 15 years, objected, and David fired him. My stomach churned. How much money are we talking about? I don't know exact amounts, but David's been very successful. His company does millions in sales annually. Between his salary, bonuses, and investments, he was wealthy. Past tense. Past tense? Cassidy pulled a folded paper from her purse. This is a copy of something I probably shouldn't have. It's a credit report I accidentally saw on David's desk last week. Mrs. Whitfield, David is in serious financial trouble. She handed me the paper. I unfolded it and stared at the numbers with growing horror. Credit card debt, $185,000. Personal loan, $95,000. Line of credit, $67,000. Status, multiple accounts 60+ days past due. How is this possible? I whispered. David was always so careful with money. Vanessa's expensive, Cassidy said bluntly. The clothes, the jewelry, the cars, the trips, she's been spending money like it's endless. And David's been letting her. More than that, he's been liquidating investments to fund her lifestyle. He sold his stock portfolio 3 months ago. He took out a second mortgage on his house last month. Oh my God. There's more. Vanessa's been pressuring David to expand the business, to take on risky investments in properties she's identified. She says there are opportunities, but I did some research. The properties are either wildly overvalued or they have serious problems, environmental issues, zoning problems, legal disputes. It's like she's steering him toward bad deals on purpose. Patricia leaned forward. Why would she do that? Cassidy's expression was grim. Because once David's completely broken and over his head, he'll be desperate. And that's when she'll suggest solutions. Like convincing his mother to help out. Or getting access to any family money or property that could be leveraged. The house, I said, everything clicking into place. That's what Sunday was about. They're broke, and they need my house to bail themselves out. I think so. Mrs. Whitfield, I'm telling you this because David's a good person who's being manipulated by someone who knows exactly what she's doing. And because. She hesitated. Because I'm afraid of what might happen if Vanessa doesn't get what she wants. What do you mean? I've seen her when she's angry. When things don't go her way. She's got a temper behind that polished exterior. And she's made comments about David's family, about you specifically, that are really disturbing. What kind of comments? Cassidy looked uncomfortable. She said that elderly people often become confused and make poor decisions. She said sometimes family members have to step in and take control, for their own good. She was talking about you, Mrs. Whitfield. About declaring you incompetent if you don't cooperate. The words hit me like ice water. She can't do that. I'm perfectly competent. I know that. But she was researching how to get someone declared mentally incompetent. I saw the browser history on the office computer she uses. Articles about conservatorship, about how to challenge someone's mental capacity, about getting emergency guardianship orders. Patricia's hand found mine and squeezed. Eleanor, this is serious. This is beyond financial manipulation, this is a threat. Cassidy nodded. That's why I'm here. I couldn't just watch this happen. David doesn't deserve this, and you definitely don't. But Mrs. Whitfield, you need to be careful. Vanessa's dangerous, and she's not going to give up just because you said no once. What should I do? Document everything. Get medical evaluations proving your competency. Make sure your legal affairs are airtight. And. She paused. And maybe try to reach Ethan. I know he's been drinking the Vanessa Kool-Aid, but he's young. Maybe he can still see reason. After Cassidy left, Patricia and I sat in silence for a long time, watching the young mother gather her child and leave the playground. "I need to talk to Ethan," I said finally. "Eleanor, do you think he'll listen?" "I have to try. He's my grandson. I can't just give up on him." But even as I said it, I remembered his voice from Sunday, "You're too old to matter anymore." Could I reach someone who thought so little of me? Or was Ethan already too far gone, too thoroughly manipulated by Vanessa to see the truth? I didn't know. But I had to try. Because if I didn't, I might lose my entire family to a con artist who saw us all as nothing more than assets to be exploited. That evening, I sat in my living room with my phone in my hand, staring at Ethan's contact information. My finger hovered over the call button, but I couldn't quite press it. What would I say? How could I reach a young man who had looked me in the eye and told me I was too old to matter? Patricia had stayed with me after our meeting with Cassidy, making dinner while I processed everything we'd learned. Now she sat across from me, nursing a cup of tea, her expression worried. "You don't have to do this tonight," she said gently. "You could wait, give yourself time to prepare." "No." I shook my head. Every day I wait is another day Vanessa has to work on him, to poison him further against me. If there's any chance of reaching him, it has to be now. I pressed the call button before I could lose my nerve. The phone rang once. Twice. 3 times. I was preparing myself for voicemail when he answered. "Grandma." His voice was flat, guarded. Not the warm greeting I'd heard from him all his life. "Ethan. Thank you for answering. I wasn't sure you would." I almost didn't. "Dad said you'd been harassing him, making up lies about Vanessa." The words stung, but I pushed through. "Ethan, I need to talk to you. In person. Please. It's important." "I don't think that's a good idea. After Sunday, I think we all need some space. Please." I hated the desperation in my voice, but I couldn't hide it. "Just give me an hour. 1 hour to talk, face to face. If after that you still want nothing to do with me, I'll respect that. But please, give me that much." There was a long silence. I could hear music playing in the background, voices talking. He was somewhere social, somewhere that made this conversation even more uncomfortable for him. "Fine," he said finally. "Tomorrow. I'll come up to Cedarbrook after work. 6 o'clock. But Grandma, if you're just going to bash Vanessa the whole time, I'm leaving. I promise I'll listen to you too. Just come. Please." After he hung up, I sat back in my chair, exhausted from the emotional effort of that brief conversation. "Well," Patricia said. "At least he agreed to meet. That's something. Is it? Or is he just coming to tell me off in person? Only one way to find out. But Eleanor, you need to be prepared for the possibility that he won't listen. That he's too far gone." I knew she was right. But I had to try. Ethan was only 24. His brain had been poisoned by a master manipulator. If there was any chance of reaching him, of helping him see the truth, I had to take it. Preparing for battle. Wednesday, I spent the day preparing for Ethan's visit like a lawyer preparing for trial. Patricia helped me organize all the evidence we'd gathered, the court records showing Vanessa's lawsuits and arrest, the financial documents Cassidy had shared showing David's debt, screenshots of Vanessa's social media showing her luxury lifestyle funded by my son's money. "You can't just dump all of this on him at once," Patricia warned. "He'll shut down. You need to be strategic." "How do you suggest I be strategic when I'm trying to convince my grandson that the woman he trusts is a con artist?" Patricia thought about it. "Start with questions. Get him talking about how he met Vanessa, what she's told him about herself, what she said about you. Let him reveal the inconsistencies himself." I spent the afternoon rehearsing different approaches, different ways to frame the conversation. But no matter how I planned it, I kept coming back to the fundamental problem. Ethan had chosen to believe Vanessa's version of reality, and nothing I said would matter unless I could crack that foundation. At 5:30, I set out coffee and the cookies Ethan had loved since childhood, chocolate chip with walnuts. Small gestures, but I needed him to remember that I was his grandmother, the person who had loved him unconditionally since the day he was born. He arrived at 6 sharp, parking his beat-up Honda Civic in my driveway. Through the window, I watched him sit in the car for a moment, his hands on the steering wheel, clearly steeling himself for this conversation. When he finally got out and walked to the door, I saw how much he'd changed in just the month since Vanessa entered our lives. He'd always been a bit lean, but now he looked thin, almost gaunt. His clothes hung on him. There were dark circles under his eyes. I opened the door before he could knock. "Ethan. Thank you for coming." "Yeah." He stepped inside, his body language defensive, arms crossed, shoulders tense. "Let's just get this over with. Would you like some coffee? I made those cookies you like." He glanced at the plate on the coffee table, and for just a second, I saw something soften in his expression. But then it was gone, replaced by that hard defensiveness. "I'm fine. You said you wanted to talk, so talk." We sat down, me in Robert's old chair, Ethan perched on the edge of the couch like he might bolt at any moment. "How have you been?" I asked, trying to ease into the conversation. "How's work?" "Fine. Grandma, I didn't drive 90 miles for small talk." "What do you want?" I took a breath. "I want to understand what happened. How we got from being close to you telling me I'm too old to matter." He had the grace to look uncomfortable. "I shouldn't have said it like that." "But you meant it." "I meant that you're not thinking clearly about this situation. You're being emotional instead of rational, and Vanessa was just trying to help you see." "Ethan, what do you know about Vanessa?" "Really know about her?" His jaw tightened. "Here we go. Dad said you'd do this." "I'm not attacking her. I'm asking a sincere question. What do you know about her background, her history, her past relationships?" "I know she's a successful businesswoman who's been amazing for Dad. She's helped him get his life back together after Mom died. She's given him purpose again." "What about before she met your dad? Where did she work? Where did she grow up? What did she do?" "She worked in real estate investment. She grew up in Oregon." "Why does it matter?" "Because, Ethan, I've done some research, and the things Vanessa has told your father, and apparently you, don't match reality." His expression hardened. "So you have been investigating her?" "That's really creepy, Grandma." "Is it creepy to want to know who's influencing my son and grandson? Who's trying to get me to sign over my home?" I leaned forward. "Ethan, did you know that Vanessa was involved with a real estate company that collapsed amid fraud allegations? Did you know she's been sued twice for financial disputes? Did you know she was arrested in Nevada for identity theft? Those are lies. They're public records. Court documents. I can show you." "No." He stood up abruptly. "This is exactly what Vanessa said you'd do. She said you'd make up stories, twist facts, do anything to drive a wedge between Dad and her because you can't stand not being the center of his life anymore." "Ethan, please, just look at the evidence. Evidence you probably made up. You can fake anything on the internet. Vanessa warned me you'd try this. Why would I make this up? What possible reason would I have to lie about this?" "Because you're jealous." He was shouting now, his face flushed. "Because you spent your whole life being the most important woman in Dad's life, and now there's someone else. Because you can't control him anymore, so you're trying to destroy his happiness." The accusations were so similar to what David had said that I knew they came directly from Vanessa's playbook. She'd programmed both of them with the same script. "I'm not jealous," I said quietly. "I'm terrified. Ethan, your father is in serious financial trouble. Did you know that?" That stopped him. "What?" "He's over $300,000 in debt. Credit cards, loans, mortgages. He's sold his investments, liquidated his retirement accounts. Vanessa has been spending money as fast as he can earn it, and now he's drowning. You don't know that. I have his credit report. I pulled out the document Cassidy had given me. Look at it. These are facts, not opinions. Ethan stared at the paper, and I saw confusion flicker across his face. He took it, reading through the list of debts, and I watched his expression shift from defiance to uncertainty. This doesn't prove Vanessa did anything wrong, he said finally, but his voice lacked conviction. She's been with him for 18 months. In that time, he went from financially stable to catastrophically in debt. Ethan, she's spending your inheritance. She's destroying your father financially. And now she's trying to get access to my house, your inheritance from me, to continue funding her lifestyle. No. Dad said the house thing was about protecting you, about estate planning. It was about transferring my home into their control so they could use it as collateral for loans or sell it outright. Ethan, I had a lawyer review the documents they wanted me to sign. That's what it really meant. He was shaking his head, but I could see doubt creeping in. I pressed on. Vanessa has been researching how to have me declared mentally incompetent. How to get conservatorship over me. If I don't give her what she wants willingly, she's planning to take it by having me declared unable to manage my own affairs. That's insane. Why would she do that? Because I'm the last source of money she hasn't tapped yet. Your father's broke. You don't have significant assets. But I have this house, my retirement savings, my life insurance. I'm worth almost $750,000, Ethan. And Vanessa wants it. He stood there, the credit report still in his hands, his face cycling through emotions, denial, confusion, anger, fear. I need to think, he said finally. This is too much. Ethan, please. I know this is hard to hear. But I need you to really think about your interactions with Vanessa. Has she been asking you questions about me? About my finances, my health, my daily routine? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, reluctantly, she asks about you sometimes. How you're doing, if you seem forgetful or confused, if you're managing okay on your own. She's building a case. Gathering information she can use to claim I'm incompetent. Ethan, I'm 70 years old, but I'm healthy and sharp. I manage my own finances, I volunteer at the library, I have an active social life. But Vanessa is trying to create a narrative that I'm declining, that I need someone to take over my affairs. Why would she do that? His voice was small now, like a child's. Because she's a predator. Because she sees vulnerable people as opportunities. Because she's done this before, and she'll keep doing it as long as it works. I pulled out my phone and showed him the news articles Patricia and I had found, the court records, the evidence of Vanessa's past. Ethan scrolled through it all, his face growing paler with each piece of information. Dad doesn't know about any of this, he whispered finally. I tried to tell him. He wouldn't listen. She's got him convinced that I'm the problem, that I'm trying to sabotage his happiness. But if all of this is true, if she's really been lying about everything. He looked up at me, and I saw the boy I'd raised, frightened and confused. What do we do? That simple question, that "we" nearly broke me. He was back. My grandson was back. We protect your father, I said firmly. We protect our family. But Ethan, your dad isn't going to believe this coming from me. It has to come from you. The plan. We spent the next 2 hours strategizing. Ethan called Cassidy Reynolds, who confirmed everything I'd told him and shared even more details about the financial manipulation she'd witnessed. The more Ethan learned, the angrier he became, not at me, but at Vanessa and at himself for being fooled. I can't believe I said those things to you, he said at one point, his voice breaking. That you were too old to matter. God, Grandma, I'm so sorry. You were being manipulated by an expert. She knows exactly how to twist people's thinking. But you're my grandmother. I should have known better. I should have listened to you. You're listening now. That's what matters. We developed a plan. Ethan would go back to San Jose and start documenting everything he could about Vanessa's activities. He'd talk to Cassidy and see if they could gather more evidence from David's office. He'd also start trying to subtly challenge Vanessa's narratives to David, planting seeds of doubt without being obvious enough to make her suspicious. This has to be careful, I warned. If Vanessa realizes we're onto her, she might accelerate whatever her endgame is. She might try to marry your father quickly, or push harder for control over my assets, or something worse. What could be worse than what she's already doing? I thought about the research Cassidy had mentioned, articles about declaring people incompetent, about conservatorship. She could try to have me institutionalized. If she can convince a court that I'm mentally unfit, she could get control over everything even without my consent. Ethan's face went pale. She wouldn't. That's illegal. It's not illegal if she can convince a judge I'm truly incompetent. And if she has your father backing her up, saying that his mother is confused and making irrational decisions, refusing help from family. I shook my head. It's happened before to other people. Elder abuse through legal manipulation. Then we need to move faster. We need to expose her before she can do that. But we need proof. Real, undeniable proof that even your father can't ignore. As Ethan was leaving that night, he hugged me tight. I love you, Grandma. I'm sorry I forgot that for a while. I love you too, sweetheart. Be careful. Don't underestimate Vanessa. I won't. And Grandma? Whatever happens, I'm on your side now. We're going to stop her. After he left, I felt a glimmer of hope for the first time since this nightmare began. I had an ally in Ethan. Together, maybe we could save David before Vanessa destroyed him completely. But that hope was short-lived. The emergency. 2 days later, on Friday afternoon, I was at the library when my phone rang. It was Ethan, and something in the frantic tone of his voice made my blood run cold. Grandma, you need to get down here. Now. What's wrong? It's Dad. He's in the hospital. Heart attack. The world tilted. What? When? This morning. He collapsed at work. Grandma, it's bad. They're saying he needs emergency surgery. You need to come. I'm leaving now. Which hospital? Santa Rosa Memorial. ICU. Grandma, hurry. I called Patricia, who immediately offered to drive me. The 90-mile trip to Santa Rosa felt like it took forever, even though Patricia drove 20 miles over the speed limit the entire way. My mind was racing. David was only 51. Yes, he'd been under stress, but a heart attack? He'd always been healthy, athletic. How had this happened? We arrived at the hospital just before 6 p.m. Ethan met us in the ICU waiting room, his face drawn and exhausted. How is he? I asked immediately. He's in surgery now. They had to do an emergency bypass. 3 blocked arteries. The doctors said. His voice broke. They said if it had happened an hour later, he probably would have died. I sank into a waiting room chair, my legs suddenly unable to hold me. My son was in surgery, his life hanging in the balance. Where's Vanessa? Patricia asked, looking around the empty waiting room. Ethan's expression darkened. That's the thing. She's not here. I've been calling her all day, and she's not answering. Her phone goes straight to voicemail. What do you mean she's not answering? Her boyfriend is in the hospital having emergency heart surgery. I know. It's weird, right? I even drove by Dad's house. Her car's not there. It's like she just disappeared. A cold feeling settled over me. Ethan, when did you last see her? Wednesday night. I went back to San Jose after leaving your place, and she was at Dad's house. We had dinner together. She was acting normal, asking me about my visit with you, seeming concerned about you and Dad reconciling. What did you tell her? I was careful, like you said. I just told her we talked, that you seemed open to working things out. I didn't mention anything we discussed about her. But something about this felt wrong. Vanessa disappearing right as David had a major medical emergency. The timing was too convenient. Ethan, I need you to check something. Can you access your father's financial accounts? Why? Just trust me. Check them. Ethan pulled out his phone and logged into his father's bank account. David had given him access a year ago in case of emergencies. As he scrolled through the transactions, his face went white. Oh my God. What? There are transfers. Huge transfers. All made yesterday and this morning. Money moving out of Dad's accounts into. He scrolled more frantically. Into accounts I don't recognize. Grandma, someone's been draining his accounts. Patricia and I exchanged looks. How much? Everything. Every account, checking, savings, investment accounts that hadn't been liquidated yet. It's all gone. There's less than $500 left total. Vanessa, I breathed. But how? These accounts required two-factor authentication, security codes. She's had access to his phone, his computer, his mail. She's had 18 months to get every password, every security code, every piece of information she needed. I felt sick. She's been planning this. Probably since the beginning. But why now? Why not wait longer, take more time? Because we were getting close to exposing her. Ethan, when you went back to San Jose after visiting me, do you think she suspected something? Ethan thought back, his expression growing more troubled. She was asking a lot of questions. About exactly what we discussed, what you said about her. I tried to be casual, but... He looked at me with horror. She knew. She figured out that I was questioning things. So she moved up her timeline. She cleaned out what she could and disappeared before anyone could stop her. But Dad's heart attack was probably stress-induced, Patricia said grimly. Ethan, has your father seemed particularly stressed lately? More than usual? Yeah. He's been working crazy hours, seemed anxious all the time. He mentioned a big business deal that was going south, something about property investments that Vanessa had pushed him into. And yesterday. He paused, remembering. Yesterday morning, he got some kind of phone call that really upset him. He was shouting about fraud, about being deceived. I thought it was about a work thing. I bet it was about the bad property investments Cassidy mentioned. He probably found out that Vanessa had steered him wrong, that he'd lost money. The stress of it, combined with everything else, the debt, the financial pressure. I couldn't finish the thought. Vanessa hadn't just robbed my son. Her actions had literally almost killed him. The aftermath. David survived the surgery, but his recovery would be long. The doctors said he'd been under extreme stress for months, which had contributed to the arterial blockages. Combined with poor sleep, increased drinking, and the emotional toll of everything he'd been dealing with, his heart had simply given out. When he finally woke up 2 days later, I was sitting beside his bed. Ethan had gone to get coffee, so it was just the two of us. Mom, he whispered, his voice weak. I'm here, sweetheart. Don't try to talk too much. Vanessa. She's gone, David. She took all your money and disappeared. He closed his eyes, tears leaking from the corners. I was so stupid. You were manipulated by someone who's very good at it. That's not the same as being stupid. You tried to warn me. I wouldn't listen. I know. Everything you said about her, it was all true, wasn't it? Yes. He was quiet for a long moment, and I thought he'd fallen back asleep. But then he spoke again, his voice barely audible. I'm sorry, Mom. For everything. For what I said to you, for trying to take your house, for choosing her over you. I'm so sorry. I took his hand carefully, mindful of the IVs. I forgive you. You're my son. I will always love you. I don't deserve. Shoo, rest now. We'll talk more when you're stronger. Over the following week, as David recovered, the full scope of Vanessa's con became clear. She'd taken over $200,000 in liquid assets from David's accounts. She'd maxed out every credit card. She'd even forged documents to take out additional loans in David's name, loans that were now in default. The police were looking for her, but it seemed she'd planned her escape well. She'd left no trace of where she'd gone. Her phone was disconnected, her apartment cleaned out, her social media accounts deleted. It was like she'd never existed. Cassidy Reynolds came forward with more information, providing the police with documents showing how Vanessa had systematically manipulated David's business decisions. There was talk of fraud charges, identity theft, elder abuse for her attempts to get at my assets. But Vanessa Sterling, if that was even her real name, was gone. The final decision. 3 weeks after David's heart attack, I sat in Gregory Thornton's office with a decision to make. David was recovering well physically, but emotionally and financially, he was destroyed. He'd lost his home to foreclosure. His credit was ruined. He was facing bankruptcy. And he was consumed with guilt over what he'd put me through, what he'd let Vanessa do to our family. Ethan had moved back to Cedarbrook temporarily, staying with me while he helped his father pick up the pieces. The two of them were rebuilding their relationship, working together to undo the damage Vanessa had caused. But there was still the matter of my will. Eleanor, Gregory said carefully, you asked me to draft new documents. Given everything that's happened, what would you like to do? I looked at the papers on his desk. Documents that would remove David and Ethan from my will entirely, leaving my estate to charity or other beneficiaries. Documents that would punish them for what they'd done, for choosing Vanessa over me, for telling me I was too old to matter. I thought about Ethan's words that Sunday, you're too old to matter anymore. I thought about David trying to take my house, refusing to believe my warnings about Vanessa, choosing her over his own mother. I thought about the humiliation, the heartbreak, the betrayal. But I also thought about Ethan showing up at my door to apologize, to warn me, to stand with me against Vanessa. I thought about David in his hospital bed, broken and sorry, holding my hand and begging for forgiveness. I thought about the grandson who used to help me in the garden and the son who used to call me every Sunday just to chat. They'd been manipulated. They'd made terrible choices. They'd hurt me deeply. But they were still my family. Gregory, I said finally, I want you to keep the protective trusts in place. Everything we set up, the independent trustee, the restrictions on distributions, all of it. Those protections stay. And the beneficiaries? David and Ethan remain beneficiaries. But with conditions. The money goes into trusts that can't be accessed by any future spouses or partners without independent legal approval. And there are requirements, financial counseling, regular accountings, proof that the money is being used responsibly. Gregory nodded, making notes. That's wise. What about the house? The house goes into a trust immediately, with Patricia as trustee. Upon my death, David and Ethan can inherit it, but only if they're not involved with anyone who poses a financial or emotional threat. If the trustee determines they're being manipulated again, the house gets sold and the proceeds go to charity. You're giving them a second chance. I'm giving them the chance to prove they've learned from this. But I'm not going to be stupid about it. The protections stay in place. There's one more thing we should address, Gregory said. Your healthcare directives and power of attorney. You currently have David listed. Change it to Patricia. And Gregory, add something to the documents. If anyone ever tries to have me declared incompetent or seeks guardianship or conservatorship over me, I want an independent medical evaluation by at least 3 doctors who don't know me or my family. And I want you to fight it with every legal tool available. Consider it done. As I left Gregory's office that afternoon, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks, peace. I'd been betrayed by the people I loved most. I'd been told I was too old to matter. I'd nearly lost everything. But I'd survived. I'd stood up for myself. I'd protected my assets and my autonomy. And I'd done it while still leaving the door open for my family to redeem themselves. Not because they deserved it, but because I deserved to be the kind of person who could forgive without being foolish, who could love without being a doormat, who could be generous without being a victim. 6 months later, David moved into a small apartment in Cedarbrook, close enough that I could help him as he rebuilt his life. He filed for bankruptcy, worked with credit counselors, and started therapy to understand how he'd been so thoroughly manipulated. I think I was looking for someone to save me from the grief, he told me one Sunday over dinner at my house. After Melissa died, I felt so lost. Vanessa seemed like she had all the answers, like she could fix everything. I wanted that so badly that I ignored every red flag. Grief makes us vulnerable, I said. Vanessa knew that and exploited it. Still, I should have listened to you. You're my mother. You've never steered me wrong. Ethan got a new job in Cedarbrook, deciding he wanted to be closer to family. He'd learned a hard lesson about trusting the wrong people, about choosing money over relationships. I keep thinking about what I said to you, he told me one afternoon as we worked in my garden together. That you were too old to matter. Grandma, I don't think I'll ever forgive myself for that. Then let it motivate you to be better, I said, handing him a trowel. Let it remind you that age doesn't diminish a person's value, that wisdom comes from experience, and that family, real family, doesn't measure worth in dollars. The police never found Vanessa Sterling. They discovered that Vanessa Sterling wasn't even her real name. She was actually Veronica Stamos, a con artist with a history spanning 3 states and at least 7 known victims. There was a warrant out for her arrest, but she'd vanished completely. Sometimes I wondered if she was out there somewhere, finding a new victim, spinning new lies, destroying another family. The thought made me angry. But mostly, I felt sorry for her. What kind of person had she become to live like that? What had happened to her to make her so willing to hurt people? I'd never know. And honestly, I didn't want to. The final reflection. A year after that terrible Sunday when Ethan told me I was too old to matter, I sat on my back porch on a beautiful autumn evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. David and Ethan were inside, cooking dinner together. I could hear them laughing about something, the sound carrying through the open kitchen window. We had a Sunday dinner tradition now. They came over every week, and we cooked together, talked together, rebuilt what had been broken. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of awkwardness, still scars that hadn't fully healed. David still carried tremendous guilt. Ethan still apologized too often. And I still had moments where I remembered how it felt to be dismissed and devalued by the people I loved most. But we were healing. We were learning. We were becoming a family again. My will remained as I'd structured it, protected, conditional, designed to prevent another Vanessa from destroying what we'd built. David and Ethan knew about the conditions. They understood why I'd done it. And they supported it. You're protecting us from ourselves, David had said when I finally told him. That's what good parents do. Patricia joined me on the porch, handing me a glass of wine. You did a good thing, she said, sitting beside me. A lot of people in your situation would have cut them off entirely. You found a middle path. I almost did cut them off. I was so angry, so hurt. But then I realized, Vanessa had already taken so much from us. I wasn't going to let her take my family too. You're stronger than you think. I'm 71 years old, and I've learned that strength isn't about never being hurt. It's about how you respond to being hurt. It's about protecting yourself without becoming hard. It's about forgiving without forgetting. It's about being smart enough to guard your heart while still keeping it open. Patricia raised her glass. To being too old to matter. I laughed and clinked my glass against hers. To proving them wrong. As the sun set over Cedarbrook and my son and grandson prepared dinner in my kitchen, the kitchen in my house that I'd almost lost, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Gratitude. Not for the pain, not for the betrayal, not for the lessons learned the hard way. But for the strength I'd found in myself. For the friend who stood by me. For the grandson who came back to my side. For the son who was learning to value what really mattered. For the home that remained mine. For the autonomy I'd fought to protect. For the life I'd defended and the future I'd secured. I was 71 years old. And I mattered. I'd always mattered. And no one, not Vanessa, not the doubters, not even my own family in their darkest moment, could ever take that away from me again. Epilogue, a message to you. Now I want to ask you something, dear viewer who's been following my story. Have you ever been made to feel like you don't matter? Like your age, your experience, your wisdom doesn't count for anything? Have you ever been manipulated by someone who saw you as an opportunity rather than a person? Have you ever had to choose between protecting yourself and protecting your relationships? These are hard questions. And there are no easy answers. But I want you to know this, you matter. Your age doesn't diminish your value. Your vulnerability doesn't make you weak. Your desire to trust and love doesn't make you foolish. What happened to me could happen to anyone. Predators like Vanessa exist everywhere, looking for people to exploit. They're skilled at manipulation, at finding our weaknesses, at turning our love into a weapon against us. But we don't have to be victims. We can be vigilant without being paranoid. We can be generous without being gullible. We can forgive without forgetting. We can love while still protecting ourselves. If you're going through something similar, if someone is pressuring you, manipulating you, trying to take what's yours, please, stand up for yourself. Get legal help. Document everything. Trust your instincts. Reach out to friends and professionals who can help you see clearly. And if you're the family member, the one who's been influenced by a manipulator, the one who's pushed away someone who was trying to protect you, it's never too late to come back. Pride and embarrassment might tell you otherwise, but real family, real love, creates space for redemption. My story had a relatively happy ending. Not everyone's does. But the key is to act, to protect yourself, to refuse to be diminished by people who see you as less than you are. Because you're not too old to matter. You're not too young to be taken seriously. You're not too anything. You're exactly enough, exactly as you are, exactly as you deserve to be treated. Remember that. Fight for that. Live that. And never, ever let anyone tell you otherwise. Thank you for following my story. Please, comment below and tell me what country you're watching from. Let me know if you've experienced anything similar. Share your thoughts, your stories, your wisdom. We're all in this together, learning, growing, protecting each other. And together, we're stronger than any manipulator, any predator, any person who would try to make us feel like we don't matter. Because we do matter. All of us. Always.